Hello, welcome everyone to the Enneagram series. My name is Hayden Lee. I'm a Master Certified Executive Life and Leadership Coach, and I'm so happy to be bringing the Enneagram series to you all. As you know, I've been interviewing different types on each video, going through all the types 1 through 9, and I'm so happy to dive in today to type 5. But before we meet our awesome type 5 panelists, I want to give you all a quick reminder of what the Enneagram is. So the Enneagram, I like to call, is a system of self-discovery, a system of self-awareness, and a system of self-liberation. What do I mean by that? So the Enneagram has 9 types, which are defined by motivation, not behavior. So the more that you know about your type, you can be more aware of how sometimes you might fixate on your default thinking, action, and feeling patterns, which may actually make it harder for you to get what you want. So the more you're aware of how you fixate on your type, the more you can liberate yourself in order to use the Enneagram as a system to develop into the best version of yourself. Because in reality, all 9 types are in us. We are whole beings, and the Enneagram helps us see how we can feel more, be more, do more, and think more. So that's why I love the Enneagram. So today, like I said, we are doing type 5 today. So Enneagram type 5 sometimes is nicknamed the quiet specialist, or the thinker, or the expert. So the core motivation for this type is the need to understand, the need to know, the need to have knowledge. So that is their main motivation that drives their behavior. So I'm so happy today we have Angela, Christopher, and Mark. So Angela, Christopher, and Mark, if you could just please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. So we'll start with Angela.
Hello, my name is Angela Tennyson. I am a leadership coach and consultant. I am more recently getting into the work of bridging divides around race, and currently in Charlotte, North Carolina. Happy to be here.
Nice, cool, thank you. How about you, Christopher?
Hello, my name is Christopher Lee Maher. I am a change agent, and I create systems that allow people to shed the stress, the tension, the distortion, and the limiting beliefs that are in the way of them being fully expressed as who they really are at their core. And I live in beautiful Marina Del Rey.
Nice. Thank you, Christopher. How about you, Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark Chester. Thanks again, Hayden, for hosting this and inviting me. I'm a video producer. My company's Edge9 Media, and I create videos that inspire change. They're usually short videos that live on social. And I live in Los Angeles.
Nice. Cool. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So all of you have experienced the Enneagram I assessment, or the Enneagram assessment that I use, which is called the IEQ9, which is the Integrative Enneagram. So my first question is, when you got your results, and it shared the description of the Enneagram Type 5, what jumped out at you? How'd that feel? Like, what resonated with you? So who wants to share a little bit of your initial reactions? Yeah, Christopher.
Me, the thing that I've always understood about myself is that I was very deep, and I was always investigating, and that a lot of my focus has been to understand. And in the understanding, it's given me the opportunity to be able to serve people powerfully, because it allows me to take complex systems and distill them down and explain them in a concise way that's assimilatable to anyone. And so when I read the profile that came back to me, it resonated immediately. It was clear, it was concise, it was direct. And I felt like somebody was understanding me as I understand myself.
Wow. Nice. Cool. Thank you. I really hear that really resonated with you, especially the part about seeking a knowledge, or seeking wisdom, and seeking deep knowledge and deep wisdom, which it sounds like it's been something you've been passionate about for a long time. I think you said as a kid that you've always wanted to be a seeker of that knowledge. How about you two? Yeah, Mark?
I think it was a while ago that I took it, but I think the first thing I was like, I wanted to be a different number. And then I was looking at it again a little while ago, and I was like, I like this one. And it just gave me more insight in who I am, and it gave me more tools to see other people in a different way. And it reminded me, it gave me more insight of why I think why I think and why I break things down the way I do. And I've always known that I was a questioner, like always questioning everything,
Mhm.
annoying my parents and teachers, but always wanting to get an answer,
Yeah.
so things would make sense.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to go back and look at it from taking a break from seeing it the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're saying about even as a kid. Once again, these themes in our lives are throughout our whole life. And even as a kid, just like Mark was saying, is making sense of the world, right? Being curious, wanting to make sense of things. Yeah. What about you, Angela?
I agree with Mark and Christopher. I'd add on that in addition to, I guess, feeling understood, like I really thought someone was like spying on me. I was like, how do they know this? It's so accurate.
Yeah.
But in thinking about being understood, I think I would add that in addition to understanding the need to understand, I need to understand that you understand as well. And so that's, I'm training someone right now and it's like, but do you understand? Like
Yes.
I'm not clear that you understand.
Yeah.
But just things like having the variety of interests and going deep with each of those, and just the variety of the different types of interest. I'm interested in anything from bartending to real estate and, 3 masters. So it's just lots of different types of information. And then I think the self-sufficiency was also pretty clear. I'm happy to help people with my information and knowledge, but less likely to request the help and support.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's very true in terms of the action patterns of fives often value independence, autonomy, self-sufficiency, right? Does that resonate with you, Mark? I see you smiling.
Yeah, it's hard for me to ask for support, ask for help for anything.
Mm,
I want to do it on my own.
mm,
And I like being independent. And I think I can make a good employee, but I make a better entrepreneur on my own because I like that
yeah,
freedom and that independence. Um, so yeah, it definitely lands for me.
yeah. So what
Well,
about you, Christopher?
I can relate with both of things that they shared. I mean, one is an entrepreneur, definitely. I like to be moving to the beat of my own drum. And it's less about rebellion, and it really is about autonomy and
Yeah,
self-sufficiency
yeah.
and independence and liberty. Yet I do love and appreciate interdependent relationships, meaning if I can be with someone, whether it's a friendship or work relationship or romantic relationship, I look for women in my romantic relationships that are good at taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Yet I do like to lean in and be a support system for them, and I am less likely to want them to be a support system for me.
Mm,
And it creates confusion in relationships. I mean, I've even been called by partners of mine. They've called me a lone wolf, and they've taken a negative take on the five versus
mm,
looking at the upside of that, because they were someone who was the exact opposite. They needed
yeah,
intense amounts of support.
yeah.
And so at first, I sort of rejected that idea. And I fought to prove that, no, I'm not that person. And then as I got to know myself more and I became more comfortable, I actually owned that part of me.
Mm-hmm.
It actually feels good to me to be the way that I am. And then when I am in need and I reach out to someone, it's oddly enough, they seem to never be there for me when I finally reach out with a need, which then reinforces for me that, oh, you are meant to be independent and taking care of
Mm,
things on your own.
mm,
The challenge is that when I've served someone so powerfully and I keep serving them out of the kindness of my heart, and when they aren't there for me, there is a place where I can start running a current of resentment. And then I want to end the relationship
mm.
because of all the time, energy, effort, and
Yeah,
consciousness and value that I put into their lives.
Yeah.
And so what I've done is I've surrounded myself with fives. So in my life,
Yeah.
I have tons of fives
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
one, I know whenever I'm in need, and I can admit that to myself, if I reach out to a five, they will help me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
That's some really great awareness there. But I think, Christopher, you're touching upon a possible blind spot of the five, right? Because I think the blind spot, because fives who do really value, autonomy and, being self-sufficient, how that could be a blind spot. Well, how may that be a blind spot in terms of how that may come off to others who may not understand how you think? What happens? Angela and Mark, what do you think is how that can be a blind spot to others who don't understand how the five thinks?
Well, I know
How,
for me, I always thought that I was a robot because I don't have my heart on my sleeve. I'm not very emotional. I'm not very charismatic, and in the past I felt like I didn't make the best first impressions. I never really asked, but I just felt after like either a date or an interview or whatever it might be, I felt like I probably could have been a little bit more
Mhm.
bubbly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a blind spot that I've been working on,
Yeah.
trying to just increase my awareness, my listening, and um, if they seem to be like checking out, or if they seem like they're disengaging, to make sure, like, check in with myself. Okay, am I being open? Am I really here? Am I present? Am I being vulnerable? So that's been a blind spot that I've been working on
Mm,
recently.
yeah. Thank you. What about you, Angela?
I did kind of a self-assessment before where I had to interview people, and a consistent theme was that I didn't share a lot of information.
Yeah.
Like, they felt very comfortable sharing with me, but I didn't share a lot of personal things, um, or what was going on with me, at a deep level. And I definitely keep that close to the heart. And so while they loved me, they still felt that arm's length
Yeah.
distance with me.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. I think definitely sometimes with fives, it may be a blind spot and it may be unintentional, or it could be intentional, but there is this notion sometimes of fives, because they're, the really deep thinkers, when they're thinking or they're, analyzing in their head, they may come off as unsentimental, right? Or they may come off as unfeeling, which can be difficult because you're not, but then it may, but for someone who's a high feeling center person, it may, it'd be hard for them to understand or connect, right? So I think, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is this, is that there's a misinterpretation. And the
Yeah,
misinterpretation is that because we're thinking very deep, what people have to realize too is that our feelings are also very deep.
Agreed.
And so someone who has their feelings on the surface isn't necessarily more feeling. It's just that they're more expressive,
yeah, the more
Expressive.
expressive of
Yeah.
the good, yeah,
right?
good
But
distinction. Yeah,
in terms of the depth of feeling is the thing that I'm attracted to.
yeah,
Okay. Like, I love the people who also have the feelings on the surface, because to me, they're very entertaining. Like, I want to pay attention to them.
yeah,
I want to look at them. I want to
yeah,
experience them. Yet there is a point in conversation and connection where I sort of feel that that's a little too shallow for me.
yeah,
And if I can spend some time with someone who can go really deep, for example, Angela, um, when she shares in the community that we're in and she gets into that depth of feeling, it reaches the whole room, right? And
mm-hmm.
before you know it, everyone is tearing up, right? And the same thing happens for me when I'm willing to get into that depth of feeling. It moves the entire space.
Yeah,
So the distinction that I would make is, the subtle distinction is that we have feelings and ours are very, very deep. And if you spend enough time with us and you're willing to slow down a bit, then we can meet you on that feeling plane. You just have to be willing to put a little time and energy and effort into the relationship.
yeah,
And then we will surprise you with how deep and rich and
mm-hmm.
sweet and moving our feelings are.
Well said.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that. This is just a unique experience because I haven't spent time with people that taken this test and that are fives. And so hearing you guys speak, it's like, this is like I'm talking to myself. And especially Angela, when you're talking about not sharing or not sharing after listening, like I've gotten that feedback as well. Like I'm great at listening. And then there's some resistance with me wanting to open up and share. But Christopher, when you're talking about like being vulnerable, when I have done that and I've judged myself thinking, oh, I'm weak or whatever it may be, but then I get people saying like, no, that was powerful. And so it reminds me that I am more sensitive and more empathic than I might appear. And when I have those moments of reflection and really see that, then it's powerful.
Oh, it's so nice. I know, when I get that feedback too, Mark, that it makes me feel so good inside, right? Because I feel a lot of times like the fives, and I'll speak for me, we get misrepresented. And so people have no idea that underneath is this really soft, gentle, sweet, kind-hearted, thoughtful, careful being that gives everyone the space for them to be themselves. And so when someone's attempting to dictate a way of being to me, I'm always pulling back my energy a bit. And I know, one, that because I have such depth to me, that I have to be mindful of what's on display, right? Because people could take my humor or my ideas and turn them into something that I didn't mean. So for instance, I wrote a book, I'm an author, and I only gave one person's name in the book, their actual name, because I wanted to honor them and share with them and everyone know how powerful this person was in my life. So maybe somebody would find them and he could have the same impact on them too. And he took the book and what I wrote, and he took it into a completely different place than where I was taking it. And, that was shocking and hurtful. And yet it kind of reminds me that the place where I'm coming from is a very different place than where he's coming from. He's coming from the surface and I'm coming from depth. I have to be mindful of that. And so that is probably one of the reasons why I can appear to be in reserve, because when I've shared passionately, without thinking, right? People have taken things into different places and they have either punished, rejected, attempted to humiliate, or been emotionally or energetically violent. And I don't know if you two have ever experienced anything like that, but I have.
Well, I will say that the unsentimental was the thing that I at first really rejected. I was like, that's not true. Like I have deep sentiment for people, events, things that have happened that have caused me to be the person that I am. And I can, go to that refuge of my mind and conjure it up just like it happened just yesterday. But, I read more into it and it talked about basically compartmentalizing. And I think because we feel so deeply, it can be debilitating if we allow it to come forth and be front and center. And because we're so carrying so deep, it can, when it goes wrong or is misinterpreted, it can be so hurtful that like the work doesn't get done, you can't move forward. And so I think in a way to adapt, it's like, okay, let me put it in this box and put it on this shelf and I'll revisit it later, but not right now where I have to keep moving forward. And so I would agree that part of, I know why I have not shared a lot of my story, and I'm still working through it, is I don't want anything to be misinterpreted. I want to be very clear about what my intention is. My intention is to help someone along their way. And so I want that to be crystal clear. And it's not for some personal gain of my own, but an offering.
Yeah.
And I want that to be clear. And so making that like, so it's the risk, right? And me taking the risk to trust that enough people will see the true intention of the offering that I want to give.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. I think this is great for you all to be so open and honest and vulnerable about, you know, your relationship with emotion and in depth. It's not a coincidence that the 5 actually sits next to the 4 in the Enneagram. The 4 is the intense creative, so the 4 is a wing of the 5. So the 5 has 2 wings, the 6 and 4, which are the 2 types on either side of you. And the 4 is the intense creative who deeply, deeply feels, who has deep, deep emotions. And then the 6 is the skeptic who is likes to plan and prepare and think of worst case scenario. And the interesting thing is, from the place of the 5 sits in the thinking center of the Enneagram, which is 5, 6, and 7. And the 5, 6, and 7 have a relationship with fear. So there's a little bit of fear going on. There's a root of fear in the 5. And also it's a relationship with fear. And then also, like Christopher was saying, that depth of emotion that's also within you, because you have both the 4 and the 6 in you. So that depth of emotions in you, but then because you're a 5 and not a 4, there's a little bit of that fear coming up in regards to vulnerability and emotion. So how does that land with you all?
There's a lot, yeah, there's fear around opening up and getting vulnerable. And when I feel like I'm in a safe space, like I was in a men's group for a while, and I felt like it was a safe space to be vulnerable. But if I meet a stranger or if I'm in a work scenario, it's harder for me to go there. And so it's something I'm working on, and I don't know how to break that fear. I don't know exactly what's behind it, but I think it's not wanting to feel those emotions, not wanting to, and maybe this is something else, but like wanting to feel weak. And I think that's just a story that I'm attached to, that I'm trying to break through. But I know that when I've let those emotions come forth, it feels good. It feels like it's like I can breathe.
But what I'm curious about actually, is maybe just my intuition is telling me maybe part of that fear is because of the depth of feeling that you all have, right? And being actually afraid of, maybe there's a fear of acknowledging how deeply you do feel, right? So then instead of acknowledging it, sometimes the default behavior may be to compartmentalize it or to avoid it. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm going to answer this
Yeah.
from my own life experience. I think because I'm so task oriented, right? I'm into the state of manifestation, and I'm a little bit like Angela said. My intention is not to avoid feeling. My intention is to stay on task. So rather than if I'm in a space, like for instance, we're part of a very powerful group named 4PC. And if I'm in a space and there's room and time for me and I'm there, believe me, I am all too willing to open up the treasure chest, the feeling and emotion and ideas and vulnerability and transparency and openness. Yet when I wake up in the morning and my feet hit the floor, I have things to process and to get done. And so I resonate with Angela's sense of compartmentalizing, yet it's different than avoidance. It's that I'm designed actually to produce and to provide and to manifest. And so that overtakes, right? Like that's I guess you call it the default. That's the driver inside of me. So that's at the head of all the other cars.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense in terms of even like intellectualizing and processing, so it can be a distinction than outwardly expressing or outwardly feeling the emotion, but
I think outwardly
intellectually.
expressing,
Yeah,
I think I have the feeling of what's going on inside of me, and I
yeah,
still focus on what's going on around me. Yet the expression of that emotion, if it isn't appropriate in that time frame and it isn't supporting what I'm there to experience and get done,
yeah,
then I will feel it while simultaneously staying on task.
yeah,
And then when that moment comes up and there's time for me, or there's a five around or someone that I can talk to, then I will, then I get the
yeah,
opportunity to
yeah,
offload. Yet the feeling, I'm still feeling the feeling. That's what I want you to that's the
yeah.
distinction I'm going to make, so that people are given the actual correct impression. I'm still feeling my feelings while I'm on task.
Got it. Do you want to add to that, Mark?
No, I think I can. I thought that was, yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay, I thought. Angela?
No, I agree. I was also kind of thinking about the sometimes the work that we take on doesn't allow for the feeling to 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 come forward at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and so in some of my previous work, like we didn't have time for that. Like the execution needed to happen. And so, looking at the five and what it, these components, I was a good person for that job because I could set aside the emotion and still accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
And so, that, and while it can be kind of like a shadow, there's also value in allowing that to be a part of who we are.
Yeah.
I feel also, like Angela's saying, there's a certain amount of appropriateness that we have to move through the world with, because people are asking us in the most vital moments to show up and be the hero. And when it's time for me to come in and problem solve and to deliver the goods, I still have to be mindful of what is being asked for in the moment. And I'm kind of saying this again, yet the distinction that I want to make is, because we have such depth of feelings, we are still feeling so deeply underneath while all of that is still going on.
Yeah.
And the benefit of having that ability is we're not puking in the wrong moment with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we do that, then what happens is people lose trust. They project onto us that we're responsible. They understand what's really going on. And then they want to drop into caretaking. And while they want to be in caretaking of me, I want to be moving forward, delivering the goods at the level and the rate that's beyond their expectation.
Yeah.
Because I think as a quiet specialist or a quiet expert, we want to under promise and we love to over deliver. And the over delivering trumps my desire to puke into the moment. And so that certain level of appropriateness is necessary for me to actually do what a five is designed and meant to do. And so having that depth of feeling at the same time, it allows me to be present and centered for what is actually being asked by the moment and by the experience. And then I can deliver what's desiring to be experienced.
And we will come back and process that. Like it didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
But in the right moment with a trusted person, or in our own cave, our refuge of our mind. But we will come back to that. It's just, if it impedes the goal in the moment, then it moves out the way.
Yeah, because it's inappropriate. And we move through the world with we're aware of appropriate behavior relative to the environments that we're in, because we have such depth of feeling, such depth of instinct, such depth of understanding of the movement and connection of energy, and such depth of thought. I know we've been placed in the category of thinking, but you have to remember that we surf into all of those other worlds. That's the benefit of the quiet expert. And, you know, for most people that are getting this information and creating these types of assessments, it's difficult for them to sit down and meet someone like me who's willing to go, hey, let me stop you for a second. Yes, you've clearly named my high qualities, but let me help you get clear on these high qualities that you don't really understand about us. And so in terms of feeling, instinct, emotion, and energy, my internal assessment of myself is that we do all of those at an extremely high level. And that's what allows us to be a specialist and an expert, because when we know when is the right moment to deliver that feeling or that instinct, that hunch, that information, or that quality of energy that that moment is asking for. No more or no less than the moment is asking for. That's a 5.
And you'll be happy to know this particular assessment, the IEQ9, is created by a 5.
Of course, right?
Yeah, this assessment was made by 5. But I love everything you're saying, Christopher. How does, but in, I think every strength, all the power that we have, sometimes in excess, it can become a weakness, right? Or it can sometimes bite us in the ass, right? So in what ways sometimes do the superpowers that you all have as a 5, how does that sometimes get you all in trouble?
I mean, the way it gets me into trouble is that when I'm in an interpersonal romantic relationship, I do too much listening and avoid expressing, right?
Yeah.
And so then it leads the person to believe that I always want to be listening to what they have to say. So then I have people connecting into me, calling me, texting me, because they have someone who's like in this depth of connection with them, right? I'm asking the right questions, I'm pulling out the deeper answers for them.
Yeah.
And now they want to have that experience with me all the time. And then what happens is I continue to stay in that experience longer than is good for me. And then I need to escape that experience and spend a serious amount of time alone.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was willing to identify in the moment and be less appropriate and be more honest about what I was feeling, then I would have escaped or exited from that experience a lot sooner and tended to the things that I needed to do for myself. And in the end, what happens is my superpower causes me to have to spend more of my time and energy alone rather than spending my time and energy investing in developing myself more.
What about you too? How does some of this get you in trouble or get you stuck?
It's gotten me, I don't know about in trouble, but if there's a problem or if something happens and it needs a quick solution, it might seem like I freeze, but I'm like running it in my head. Okay, how are we going to fix this? Like I'm figuring out the scenarios, but like in relationships or if there's like a work problem, I'm like figuring it out in my head, but it might seem like I'm a deer in headlights. And so I think that is how it hasn't gotten me in trouble, but I feel like when I see other people like respond quickly or quicker, then I feel like, oh, I want to do that versus it just being stuck in here.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that pops up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of that same example where, you know, some people just move into action and they're like, okay, you're okay with this? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to run some scenarios real quick. Let's anticipate some questions that will be asked once this decision is made. And, so I come against that, like, someone just like, I don't have time, let's just make a decision and go. And I'm like, well, we need to have, I won't take a day, but let's not do it in the next 2 minutes. Like, can I get 10 minutes just to, process before we move forward? And I think just in our world of many times we need to take a beat before we respond, before we act. And if that happens, I think there's a more thoughtful response. There's a more thoughtful action that comes behind it. And so it's not so much cleanup on the back end. So it's a little bit of prevention on the front side to prevent all this mess on the back side.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time, so I definitely want to move to lines of development, which I think all of you are, pretty really aware of, your strengths and some of your challenges. And the Enneagram, there's also lines to help us, even develop into even a more richer 5, right? Even like a better version of the more evolved 5, which I think all of you have done a lot of work already. But to keep in mind the lines of development, so with the 5, well, what I wanted to mention though, each type has a vice and has a virtue, and the vice is sometimes when we get overly fixated in our type, it might get us in trouble, right? It might, so the vice of the 5 is called avarice, avarice, which is because 5s are so great at holding those boundaries and really being, conscious of their time and energy and resources. But then the avarice might be in excess of, excessively guarding one's time, energy, resources. That could get one stuck. And the virtue of the 5 is non-attachment. And I want to make the distinction: non-attachment is different than detachment. Because like Christopher was saying, like 5s deeply feel. But non-attachment sometimes is this idea of being more, well, I think like Christopher was saying too, is like being really more conscious of when to give energy and how to give energy, and maybe establishing boundaries in a different way or sooner, and not being so attached to certain things or certain structures. I mean, what does non-attachment mean to you all, and how do you think that might be seen as like a way to help loosen ourselves up or help liberate us a little bit more?
I mean, for me, when I feel into the concept of non-attachment and how it applies to my life and how I move through the world, I will put in all the time, all the energy, all the effort necessary to produce the result that's desired, yet I'm not attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a place where I understand that there's a larger field of energy than the assumptions that I make about life. And so I do my best to get out of the way and show up mindfully and rightfully, and then allow the outcome to evolve into what it is meant to be, rather than my limited projection about reality.
Yeah.
And whenever I get overvested and I leave the non-attachment state, I watch how vulnerable I become to upset, and how vulnerable I become to anxiety, how vulnerable I become to anger, how vulnerable I become to fear.
You mean when you are attached to something, or you are attached to the outcome,
Yeah,
you're more vulnerable to fear and anger? Okay.
Yeah. When I'm overly attached and I'm living from a vested position.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like people come to me, and Angela coaches and you coach, and I show up and serve them powerfully, yet ultimately how they use the information and data that I give them and the result that they produce, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Before, I used to be overly vested, and I would want it to look like this, sound like this, be like this. And as I started to open myself up and grow beyond my own limitations, I began to understand that there's a deeper process here. My job was to show up and say and do and be the way that I was. The outcome that was coming for them was always coming for them, regardless of what I did or said or how I was being. And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
So I love the non-attachment state of being.
Yeah. That's a virtue. The virtue of the five is being in
Yeah.
that non-attachment state. And it kind of reminds me, actually, Angela, what you're talking about, like how the importance of, you understanding, but also the importance of making sure the other person understands. And as important as that is in terms of what you're describing, because you're training someone, I think, but also Christopher's just describing too. So if you're so attached sometimes to making sure they understand, but like Christopher's saying, sometimes that's not really in your control, right? It's up to them to take the knowledge that you share and do what he or she wants with it. So how does that land with you that non-attachment can actually help liberate you?
Well, I agree a lot with Christopher said. In that specific example, though, I'm like, you need to understand because don't come back, like, don't depend on me
Yeah.
and think that, oh, I cannot understand now and I'll just ask you later.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's being deeply seated in my non-attachment, like, okay, I am showing up for you now. Let's make sure you
And then
understand
peace,
this
and then we got
now,
once I'm gone, I'm
because
gone.
after that, we're not discussing this again.
Yeah.
Like, don't
Yeah.
think you can be, so that's, coming for my time and
Yeah.
my liberties, because now I feel responsible that I'm going to have to tell you this again. And it's like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, let's move through this so that you're clear. I'm clear that you're clear. And then we can move on.
Yeah.
And we never have
I
this
love that.
conversation again.
Yeah.
And
I love, and yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The thing that happens for me in my business, and thank you for sharing, Angela, that was all very clear, and has been some of my experience as well. The other thing for me where I think non-attachment and that virtue works against me is that people come through a 5-day process with me, and then if I never see them again, I'm happy. And then Rich said to me, these are your fans and your customers. It might be a good job to stay tethered to them. And I was like, oh my God, COVID came, right?
Yeah.
He's showing up at 7 a.m., 5 days a week, and he's throwing an extra call in for the 4 PCers.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at this and I'm like, he's getting even more attached. And I was like, this is too much. This is way too much. In fact, no, I'm not going to be on any of those calls. I need to pull my energy way back. And then what happened is I realized that halfway through COVID that, oh, staying attached, okay, staying tethered to them is really supportive for them. And so I could show up 3 or 4 times a week for an hour and serve the people that I've been serving for the last couple of years powerfully. That might be a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I decided to do that. And it's been really wonderful. And so,
go ahead. Finish that thought. Well, I just want to say, I think a good distinction for non-attachment in that case is not being attached to the time and energy and resources that you so love, right?
yes.
Because you really are a model of someone with clear boundaries. I mean that in the best way possible. But in the non-attachment in that case is attaching your attachment to your clear boundaries of time, energy, and resources. So when you released attachment to that and you allowed you're a little bit more flexible to be tethered with some of these people, it added value to your life. Yeah.
It totally added value. And it was a total blind spot. And you were absolutely correct around the avarice.
Yeah.
The avarice.
Avarice, yeah.
Yeah, because avarice,
really hoarding your own time, energy, and resources, and not realizing, giving.
Doing that.
And when fives give a little bit more of their time, energy, and resources, it's amazing. But being aware, like Christopher said, of not giving too much too, because then it drains you of too much energy.
Yeah.
What about you? I just want to get on Mark because I know you got to go in a few.
Yeah, I'll give
Mark,
a quick
the
answer.
virtue of non-attachment. How does that land with you?
When I see it as of entering things with a level of neutrality and letting things not slide, but letting things not affect me like they might affect others, or and that kind of goes with boundaries too, and making sure that I'm clear on my boundaries with working with people. And then the other item was the energy, and yeah, definitely I like my quiet time, like my time to recharge and listening to my body and my mind regarding not burning out and just creating healthy habits along that.
Yeah. Nice. And then part of non-attachment too, in terms of energy, is remembering that there's abundance of energy in the world, meaning like, like there's, because avarice sometimes comes from the fear of, getting depleted, and then, but then remembering non-attachment in the sense that, but there's an infinite amount of energy out there that can be replenished, right? Because that helps with the fear of sometimes, oh, this is so much draining energy, which it can be, but at the same time remembering, but I also have the strength and trust in myself that I will be able to gain that energy back. So it's really being mindful of who you want to give energy to, who's valuable enough to have the energy, but trusting that you will be able to replenish that. So the last point I want to make, though, about the lines of development is the 5 has lines of development to 7 and 8. 7 being the enthusiastic visionary, and 8 being the active controller. So the stretch line for 7 is which provokes deeper change, and that's to the 7. And the 8 is called the release line. You need both lines, but sometimes when you're really fixated in your type, let's say over avarice is happening, sometimes stepping to the 8, which is assertive, stepping into your power, getting clear on boundaries and being, assertive, that will help release some of that stress of, being over avarice. And then you can stretch to a 7, which is more about spontaneity, right? And spontaneity, more optimism, spontaneity and fun and freedom, not having as much structure. So those are really the lines of 7 and 8. So if we could just wrap up with so the 8, like I said, being about strength and power, being assertive, and the 7 being about freedom and liberation, spontaneity. Which one of those 2 lines do you think could help maybe help in your development to help spice things up as a 5? Yeah.
Well, for me, the name of my book is Free for Life.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that sort of answers that question.
Yeah.
Like my singular focus has been on gaining levels of freedom from my limiting beliefs and my ideas that I create. And I can tell now that once you reinforce the aberrance for me, I was cataloging or unpiling or unpacking, what you guys call it, and looking at all the instances in which I do that. And I think as I diminish more of my aberrance, it helps me get to the 8 and to the 7 with more ease and more grace and less effortless or less effort.
Yeah,
it becomes effortless effort to be able to tune into those frequencies and access those behaviors on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Angela? 7 and 8, how would those help you develop?
Definitely stepping into my power more is something that I am actively working to do more of. And just freedom, liberty is a huge value. And so what comes to mind is really stepping into my power to create the freedom that I really want.
Wow. Yeah. How about you, Mark?
Having a 2-year-old has definitely helped with the 7 elements of being spontaneous, because I was like, okay, she's gonna go to bed at this time, we're gonna eat it, but I had to kind of learn to kind of go with the flow a little bit and listen to her, and she's been a great teacher on allowing me to go there. And then for 8, stepping into my power, there's been a couple like the beginning of the year, I stepped into a leadership role, and I was the leader of like 40 people, and we raised about $70,000 in 10 days. And I kept getting feedback like leadership is it, because I wasn't trying to figure out the best way to, I don't want to brag. Well, I kept getting feedback saying that you're a natural leader, and I didn't see myself like that. And I was just like, we got to keep moving, going forward, kind of like what you guys were saying earlier.
Yeah.
And so stepping into those roles that will give me that opportunity to step into that 8 more. I keep looking for those opportunities because it was fun. I felt this energy in me during that period. Like it was crazy. Like this engine turned on and I was like lit up, and I really enjoyed it. So that's kind of,
well, it's about owning the power, right? Because you have the power in you, but 8s own it and they claim it. So Well, wow, thank you all so much. Wonderful 5 panelists. This has been amazing. Thank you for sharing, your heart and your minds with us and all of our watchers. This has been amazing. I'm going to ask you all to check out with one sentence in just a sec. So think about what you want your one sentence to be and what you want everyone to know about a 5. So while you're thinking about that, while you're thinking about that, viewers, thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned a little bit more about Enneagram 5 today. Please visit my website, haydenlee.com. That's HAYDENLEE.com. And you can subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to learn more about all the fascinating Enneagram types. All right, so who wants to start off with what's one sentence you would like to end this with to let everyone know about what you love about a 5, what you want them to know about being a 5?
I want everyone to know that under promising and over delivering is how we live and what gets us excited and what feeds our souls.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mine would be if you meet a 5, be patient because it will have a big payoff.
Yeah. I would say take the time and get to know a 5. But, don't ask too
Don't
much.
get to know you too much.
Just let us ease into it.
Yeah.
Let us ease into
that.
it.
Yeah.
Let us ease into it.
Yeah. No. Thank you all very much. I really do feel honored to be able to know all of you on a deeper level, on a personal level. And it really is amazing to when you do open up. And I love being friends with 5s, and I'm so grateful to have you all in my life. So this has been amazing. So thank you all for being here, and thank you viewers for watching. And yeah, that's it for today. So we'll see you soon. And you 5s, go out there and under promise and over deliver and go change the world the way that you all do. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Hayden.
Bye.
Bye.